$500,000 more in our rainy day fund than New York State allows. And they know it, and they do it, and they mislead you. And I'm surprised, and if I were the people who do it, I would get that it was done under orders of the board, because scheming to defraud is a serious offense. And this is what this budget is. It's misleading information for the intent of financial gain. And I'm surprised that the two professionals on our school board, that you would be involved in a scheme to defraud, because this is what this budget is, and we've got 5 consecutive budgets and 5 consecutive audits that prove what I'm saying.
Not only am I going to remind you of that, but I'm also going to tell this audience that budget that you speak about was audited by New York State Controller's Office this year. The New York State Controller's Office found nothing defrauding, nothing improper.
In 2010, and you're doing
we are not talking about 2010, okay? I think we're done.
They can't do a complete audit of everybody. You know how many municipalities there are?
Mr. Kugelmatz, your time is up. Thank you. And I'm sorry, just before, I would encourage those, if you look at, again, the state was in here, audited us, and found no fraud, no misspending. So, and that's what they do when they come in, they look for that. So they did not find that. So if you're so inclined, the audit, I think, is on the website. And if not, you can look it up on the comptroller's website. Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. B.J. Pierce, Astwood, 2680 Grand Avenue. My first question is, do you not have a timekeeper and a bell?
We do.
We do.
Okay, just checking. Number 2, I'm very new to the community, and I have a 5-month-old grandson at home, so I'll be here for a while. But my question also is, are all your meetings always on Wednesdays?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All of our regularly scheduled meetings are generally the second Wednesday of every month.
Okay. I was concerned because it is the Lenten season, and many of us have other obligations on Wednesdays, so that's one of the reasons I was late. Number 3, is it not the privilege of a PTA to choose those who they want to represent them when they're interviewing candidates for a new principal? And if it is, then a person that is recommended that is a retired educator, even though they may be the grandparent as opposed to a parent of the children in the school. If the grandparent is the one that's active, if the grandparent is the one that's hands-on, if the grandparent is the one that is involved, should they not be allowed that privilege?
So you're talking about serving on the interview committees for the principals?
Yes.
I'm not sure what
we make a call to PTA and they tell us who's sitting on the
Right, so it sounds like it's a PTA issue, not necessarily.
Well, I was told that after recommendation was made, that they would rather have had someone that was a parent as opposed to a grandparent. Just mention it in passing.
Who's the they that would rather have the?
Can I say?
Well, not if
The
it's
school,
the
they
school
said
or
the
the
school-
PTA.
I think, no, it was the school board.
The school board is not involved in determining who.
The district, I'm not sure, but I
Okay.
was told that whomever they suggested the names to, they were told that they would rather have a parent rather than a grandparent. Just mentioning in passing.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Cameron.
Okay.
Right.
At that school, but the person that, we are the people that attend the PTA meetings, the activities,
Right.
and the events with the children.
Yeah, and I was chosen as a retired educator, actually a retired educational administrator. I thought my expertise or my knowledge would have been very well spent. See, now it's working. It wasn't before.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're involved in a dialogue at a reasonable level, you can hear the timekeeper.
Right, okay. That's open for discussion or clarification at some point.
Dr. Cami said she would,
I'll talk to you guys after.
if you wanted to speak with her after the meeting.
Okay, probably not, because it's late, but.
Or at another time.
At another time. I had planned to at another time since I was here.
Okay.
My third and final is a comment. I don't know how many of you saw the expose on the district that was done by Channel 7, but it was very well done, and I was very, very proud. And so was my granddaughter, who happens, oh, that's so-and-so. She knew some of the children from the high school, so
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Have another parent come out or person come in?
Good evening, Yvonne Salerno, 2608 West End Avenue, Baldwin. And again, good evening. Okay, so I have a question first off. Has there been any consideration in this year regarding expansion of the bus route to regain what was voted? Because I'm in that pocket in Baldwin on West End Avenue, and I think I had mentioned it a year prior, and I know that several people have lost the busing in that area, so I don't know, has that come up again?
We have not had a conversation about that as a board, and if we were to make a change, it actually would be, but we wouldn't make the change. We would put a resolution up for the community to vote on, but we have not had a conversation about that.
Because I know I've mentioned it at board meetings in the past, and it was explained that that was voted out from the community, but since then, there's been, some conversations here and there, and I would like to have that brought back into conversation, because I had the busing in the beginning when I first moved here 8 years ago. It was great, and now I've become the carpool mom, and it definitely takes a village. If I wasn't a stay-home mom, I don't know what I would do, because I have high school or middle school and grade school, so everybody's helping each other out. The morning is crazy. If I didn't have people helping me out, I'd be like driving around for an hour and a half. Okay, second thing, grounds at Meadow Elementary. I'd like to bring in the conversation, is it possible, and how do we go through getting proposals for awnings at each of the entrances for just the children's entrances and exits, because in inclement weather, we're often standing out there between 15, I would say about 15 minutes, because nobody parks in the school's, area. Everybody parks relatively about a block or two away from the entrance of the schools, and the entrances are all around the school, but when you get there, everybody's with their umbrellas, and even on the exits, the teachers have to look to see if parents are in place and the children are kept here. And I just thought that maybe awnings would be a really nice idea. And how do we go about pricing them? Is that something that gets done through the board, or is that something I bring to the board?
You want to?
Well, I would say that would be something the principal would have to recommend, and it's not something, schools don't work the way us as homeowners work. There's processes to do anything like that. So I'm happy to bring it up with Mrs. May to see if that's something that...
Well, I mentioned it to her. She said definitely, probably not structures, but awnings would probably be an easier thing to look into than actually having, like at the middle school where they have, the actual cement block overhang by the entrance. But awnings, whatever the process is, I'd like to try to start the conversation and/or bids and such to see what the pricing would be.
And I don't know what the steps are.
We'll talk to Ms. May about the
Yeah.
feasibility of even considering that in the building. I couldn't tell you that we're going to do that, but we certainly can have a conversation
Yeah.
with the business office and buildings and grounds and the buildings. to see
Okay.
if it's something that we want to pursue.
Because I definitely asked her first. I didn't come up with the
Right,
idea.
just remembering that as big as the awning is,
Mhm.
there will always be more kids, and so there'll be kids outside the awning. Right?
True, but, yeah, true, but there's nothing there
So I
right
don't
now.
know that, I don't know, I mean, I appreciate the suggestion, I don't know that it would solve the problem of, inclement weather and that, but I mean, I appreciate the suggestion.
Okay.
Great.
Last thing, but not least, would be a menial thing, but I don't understand. In the health office, this is my first year being president, so I didn't realize that part of the PTA budget is actually facilitating having access to socks and underwear for children who have accidents. And I thought, that's peculiar. Why is that not something maybe that the schools should have a budget for, especially at elementary level?
I think that's dependent on the schools.
Yeah.
Is that really? Because I'm like, what is that about?
Something I'd have to look into.
I know, I was like,
Yeah, I don't, I mean, if that's,
it's a
yeah.
PTA budget, it's part of the budget, which is odd.
Yeah, it sounds like something the PTA has taken on, but not necessarily something that, that is mandatory for school districts to provide, so.
It's not, okay,
Yeah.
right. That's what I was wondering, if it
Yeah.
was something that was
Right.
already deliberated and next out.
Yeah.
All right, so thank
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you very much. Mhm.
Trudy McKinley, 119 New York Avenue, Freeport. So I tried to listen to all of the secret information in
You didn't get
regards
it all?
to, and I'll reference that at another time, but I didn't hear specifically the plans for Brookside in regards to a multi-purpose space. Because right now, our gym serves as our gym, auditorium, cafeteria, multi-purpose, everything. So that is a scheduling nightmare in regards to just the overall school day. So my advocacy is for the expansion and wanting to get an understanding of how Brookside can be in the conversation in regards to capital improvement.
My general sense is something like that would be very expensive. You're talking about adding space? Yeah, so, and that is probably, and I'll let Dr. Kami, if she wants to expand on it, would likely be something we would need to do a bond for, rather than paying for that out of capital reserve. My guess is that there would not be enough in the capital reserve to do the things that we need to do for security purposes and this expansion. But we have kind of had preliminary conversations about it at some point in the next few years doing a bond for work that is necessary in the district, and something like that, to my mind, would likely be part of that discussion. But I don't know if you disagree or.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Gail Ashby, 3567 Bertha Drive. I have a quick comment. Can we revisit the vendor that we're using for our meal program? Because we're losing so much food. When I come into Meadow, for example, the garbage is filled with just all the food thrown out, and it's such a tough thing to see, because there are people around the world that are starving. So if the children are going to be wasting it, can we at least revisit who are the vendor that we're using? It's just, for me, at least 4 days out of the week, I'm packing lunch, because my children are like, the pizza is like cardboard, or the chicken is hard, or the one Friday was, well, they switched from chicken or pizza dippers to spaghetti and meatballs. So it's like, can we please, Dr. Kami, revisit our vendor for our school program lunch, at least at the elementary school level. Thank you.
What building are you at?
This is my building, Meadow.
Meadow?
Yes.
Okay, we're hearing a lot, no, I know, and this is why, yeah, that's why I wanted to ask, because I'm hearing it from,
So here's what our
schools.
dilemma is, and I hear what you're saying. The dilemma is that because we don't have kitchens at the elementary schools, that we can't prepare the food. So when we look for a vendor, what we have to do is look for somebody that is willing to, or has the capacity to serve food that really basically needs to be microwaved. And to your point, you know, we have elementary schools without kitchens. So if we were to look at, you know, expanding a lunch program, what we would really need to do is we would really need to add kitchens to our elementary schools, which of course means adding staff. And that would be something that we would consider to do in a bond issue. When the district, this was prior to me being here, went out, decided to do a lunch program at the elementary schools and went out for RFP on that, I believe there was one vendor. And so, you know, we're always on the look for that, but we've not found anyone who does this type of vending without a kitchen other than the one that we have. So we're always on the lookout for that, but I think the long-term solution for that is to have a kitchen.
And just in terms of the vendor, right, we're kind of limited in terms of the vendors that are available.
Has anything come up since then? Have there been any other vendors that provide, I know this was 5 years ago, but have we evaluated?
We're constantly on the lookout.
Okay.
So can we consider going back to pizza lunches then? Because
At school lunch.
So because we're part of the school lunch program, there are certain regulations and restrictions around that, and that has everything to do with outside food coming in, and a lot of that has to do with the nutritional value of that. So I think we need to look at a long-term solution to actually satisfy it. We are always looking for vendors, and we'll continue to do that. I wish I had a better answer.
Good evening, Jamal Scott, 887 Willowbend Lane. Just to continue on the school lunch, what vendor do we use now?
Preferred meals.
You could check with Whitson's or Aramark.
We have.
They don't do that.
We don't have, do we have trays like the hot stations?
We don't have hot stations.
Oh, we don't have hot stations, that's the issue.
We've sent them, but they're not responding, not interested in providing this kind of service.
Okay. I know that they're probably the two biggest vendors in Long Island.
If we had kitchens.
Have kitchens, or not even kitchens, but if you had
Need
hot
space.
stations, you have
But
to.
you need space for that.
Space for that, yeah. You don't need a kitchen, but if you can do the stations, then I know for a fact that Whitson's and Aramark will provide. So we might be able to get a little creative to just create some hot stations, and that might solve the problem. Just a suggestion. I have a question really mainly on, I'm not trying to stir things up, but I'm looking at our financials, our fund balances. I'm looking at the unassigned fund balance. And I'm looking at our budget for this year was 128 million, is that correct? And our unassigned fund balance was 7.8 million. So even though the gentleman earlier was a little unprofessional, I should say, but we're over 4% of the state regulated fund balance, unassigned fund balance.
So we're
at 6%. We're at 6%. So my question is that I know we're using some reserves to balance out next year's budget, but I also, when I asked earlier, you said the 1.48% is the cap, and we're coming in at cap. So because we're having this issue with the state, and we can't write off itemized tax above 10,000, maybe we should suggest us coming in at 1%, and then taking a little bit more from that reserve, so we'll come in under that 4% cap to make sure that we're within state regulations. That's a suggestion.
So, and understandably so, here's where the money goes, and this was audited by the state and the comptroller's office. So we're at the 4%. There is something called a smart schools bond. That smart schools bond, we have put in our application, and it is almost exclusively for infrastructure and security. The total that we were allocated for smart schools was $2.6 million. To be able to receive the smart schools bond money, the school district has to lay out the money first, and then they're reimbursed from the state over a period of time. So the 4% plus the other $2.5 million is really the amount that we're allowed to go beyond, and then the smart schools bond money. That was asked by the comptroller's office. That was the explanation. They looked at the books. They agreed with us, and in fact, their comment was that that is a good use of the funds. They did not have a problem with that. If we weren't able to put that aside, in order, once we get approval, we have to lay out the $2.6 million to do the work that we're planning to do. So that's the explanation of the almost 6%.
Absolutely, but once you do lay out the 2.4 million, unless you're doing more than what you're allocated for the smart school funds allocation, once you do put out that 2.4 million, you're going to get the money back. So that money is going to go back into reserves, and it might put you again above the 4%. So maybe not everyone in this audience know, but I know that the smart school fund allocation grant does not act as state aid. As soon as you use the money and you ask for reimbursement, you get it within 60 days. It's not like a year lag. So you might want to consider, once again, reducing the state cap, and reducing the state cap and still using some of our reserves. I know it's not too late to lower the levy. You have till the adoption date. So we might want to consider that, because you still, depends on how you do your accounting, that will solve everything as far as reserves and things of that nature. Because you're going to get the 2.4 back.
Right, but we have to lay it out first, and that's the issue in terms of cash flow. We're holding that money so that we can spend it.
I hear what you're saying, but once again, I look at the reserves. The unassigned reserves is 7 million, right? So that's 6%. So you could have went into the reserves and laid out the money, and still, when you got the money back, refunded, and the reserves have still been replenished. And you wouldn't have to have that 2.4. Now, that's a reason that you can give the state, and the state can come up with in order to accept us being above the 4%. I get that, but I'm just saying there's different ways of doing things, and you might want to look at that. Another question is, you mentioned, especially on the vote with the capital, I heard 4 million, 5 million, and 1 million. So, and I know that I looked at the financials, we only have 11 million in capital, which means that it sounds like we're going to deplete the whole capital reserve for next year. Is that correct?
One of the capital.
What's the total?
1 and 2 will be depleted, but we'll be adding to the third one.
Say it again.
There's 3 capital reserves, 1 and 2, which we mentioned will be closed out with that. And then on the third one, we'll be using the current balance, but we can add more to that over time like we did with the earlier ones.
So if you're adding more over, so what's the total of the capital reserves that's being used for next year? 10.9. So as of right now, we'll have $100,000 maybe left, or not even $100,000 left in capital reserve. Okay, so how do we plan on replenishing the capital reserve, because that's really important for the infrastructure of our buildings, and our buildings are pretty old.
How we do it.
But that's what you're gonna recommend for us to vote on?
The smart school bond money can be placed when it comes back in, so we're not above the 4%.
No, I understand it could be placed there, but we haven't heard what you're gonna do, so if I didn't ask this question, we wouldn't know. If that's the intention. You could have just came up with that.
No, we've been having conversations about this. We had the public hearing about the Smart Schools bond, and we've had conversations about it at board meetings.
I mean, that's good. I just, once again, we should lower our tax.
I think, sorry, just one point of note. I think it's also important for you to know that as a board, we've had several budget conversations and they were more elaborate. There was more detail on the admin side. There was more detail on the capital side. This was definitely an abbreviated version. So we presented the Smart Schools bond and more discussion around program, admin, and capital. For the purposes of this meeting, it was obviously a lot more abbreviated. So these discussions were publicly done at least, I'd say 2 or 3 times in the past. So I think just a point of clarification, this was done on 3 occasions. If you look in the school calendar, it lists budget presentations in there.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that we're above this 4%, and I'm saying that the money could have been the 2.4 million. We didn't have to have that money. Because the state came in and ordered us, and we was over the 4%, then we could turn around as a district and say, okay, we're going to use that 2.4 million so we can allocate our smart school allocation. But the reality is that it didn't have to be there. It could have been 5 million at the 4%, but we could have used some of that 5 million because we would have been replenished when we got the money back. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, all right.
4%.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no one else going to the podium, I just need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Reed. Second by Mrs. Dreska. All those in favor? Aye.